Hi, my name is Ann Wasco, and I want to welcome you to this virtual tour where you'll learn why Canada's beef industry has a reputation for being a leader in environmental sustainability. From coast to coast, and from the farms and ranches that raise calves, to the feeding operations that prepare cattle for marketing, and finally to the processing plants where Canadian beef is packaged for domestic and international markets, you'll see for yourself how cattle are helping to protect Canada's grasslands ecosystem and how science is creating new gains in energy efficiency and reductions in the amount of water, feed, and land that are required to produce beef here in Canada.
Canadian ranchers manage their natural resources to ensure their farms remain environmentally sustainable, economically viable, and to enhance the health and productivity of their land. The majority of Canada's remaining temperate grasslands are owned by cattle ranchers, making them the guardians of one of the most endangered types of ecosystems around the world. Beef cattle now fill the vital role of grazer on the landscape, promoting a healthy, biodiverse ecosystem and preserving critical habitat for many wildlife species. Ranchers take care to not over or undergraze pastures by using tools such as movable electric fences to graze one area at a time and then resting to allow that pasture to rejuvenate. Grazing can also help to fertilize the grass naturally by distributing manure over pasture land. In some regions of Canada, cattle help mitigate the risk of wildfires near communities. Grazing these areas promotes new, green growth that doesn't burn with the speed and intensity of dry, tall grass, which means lower fire intensity and also lower carbon emissions from wildfires. Grass is monitored in order to leave enough forage for wildlife and to maintain the integrity of the forest. Well-managed grazing increases the soil organic matter, encouraging root growth and increasing the amount of carbon stored in the soil. Canadian native grasslands can hold up to 70 tons of carbon per acre. Grass stores most of its carbon in the roots, which remain underground after cattle graze. Beef production protects Canada's grasslands and wetlands from being cultivated and drained, helping to make sure these ecosystems remain intact along with all of their environmental benefits. Wetlands behave as the natural filter of a grassland's ecosystem. Riparian areas which connect land and water help to clean our water, create flood and drought resiliency, and provide habitat including nesting and spawning grounds for fish and other wildlife. Canadian ranchers work with conservation groups to create riparian pastures by fencing cattle out of these critical areas, while solar watering systems can be used to give cattle access to fresh, clean water. Nature Conservancy of Canada estimates that areas used for grazing provide habitat for roughly 2/3 of Canada's wildlife and often are not suitable for growing crops. Land preserved through ranching supports more than 60 species at risk that depend on Canada's grasslands. A thriving beef industry helps to ensure these critical landscapes remain healthy and intact for the species that depend on them and for all Canadians. In Canada, beef cattle are primarily raised on pasture and then following weaning enter a feeding operation where they are provided a diet that includes grain. Canadian farmers take their environmental responsibilities very seriously, and they are required to meet standards and regulations enacted by the federal and provincial governments. One of the ways Canada has been reducing the environmental footprint of beef production is by increasing efficiency during feeding. After grazing, cattle are typically placed into pens that permit close observation and less waste when feeding. The amount of feeding required is a key measure of efficiency. In Canada, this measurement is estimated to have improved 30% over the past 30 years, due in part to advances in regenerative farming practices such as zero-till planting, cover cropping and crop rotation, and also veterinary care of cattle. Another important factor in this progress has been improvements in cattle genetics through crossbreeding. Cattle can play a vital environmental role by consuming crops that have been damaged by weather or pests, and also by eating byproducts of food processing that have been approved for this purpose, including distiller grains or corn husks. Canadian farmers work with local food processors and suppliers to help divert specific food byproducts from landfills, feeding them to cattle and upcycling these products into high-quality, nutritious beef. Feeding operations produce manure as cattle are raised. This manure must be stored in a careful manner and may be composted to eliminate any harmful bacteria and to create a material that enriches garden soil. Efficient and environmentally responsible use of livestock manure also provides an important source of nutrients, organic matter and carbon to pastures and cropland. The timing and application of manure is regulated by provincial governments. Feeding area surfaces are designed with the objective of maximizing cattle comfort and animal welfare. Pen design also contributes to water quality. By encouraging the growth of grass, trees, and other plant life, the vegetation can act as a natural filter for water runoff from farms. Catch basins may also be used to store manure for later use as fertilizer on cropland. Like farmers and ranchers, Canada's beef processors continue to work to enhance practices that influence environmental sustainability. This includes reducing inputs such as water and energy, while maximizing the utilization of each animal, including both edible and inedible components. Water used in beef production processes and for cleaning equipment and work surfaces is often recycled using specialized treatment facilities. This significantly reduces the amount required to process beef, and the most sophisticated treatment systems can return water that exceeds Canadian drinking water standards. Processors have also been making progress on waste reduction while becoming more energy efficient. Biodigesters are being used to treat manure as well as byproducts of the slaughter process, turning what would be waste into new products and sources of heat and energy while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The biodigester uses bacteria to digest organic waste, producing biogas that is used to create electricity or heat and thereby reducing the consumption of conventional energy in the processing plant. Biodigesters also create nutrient-dense liquids that can be used as fertilizers, as well as solid residues that can be used as fertilizer or animal bedding. Another method of improving energy efficiency in beef production is through the use of what's called a fluidized bed boiler. This technology converts manure or inedible materials from the carcass into steam, heat, and electricity to be used inside the plant by suspending the materials in a bed of hot ash through which air is blown to create higher combustion efficiency. Rendering is another method of creating value from inedible materials obtained during beef processing. Similar to the process of rendering animal fat into lard, which has been done for centuries, this method of recycling takes byproducts such as bone, blood, and fat and recycles them into new products, including pet foods, soap, candles, and biodiesel. After cattle are slaughtered, one of the steps to prepare the carcass for processing is to remove the internal organs. The partially digested contents of the stomach, called paunch manure, can be used as a valuable natural fertilizer. The reduction of waste during processing is a critical element in Canada's goals to ensure we efficiently utilize as much of the animal as possible. An estimated 99% can now be used for food, clothing, leather goods, pet food, upholstery, biodiesel, medicine production, and much more. Improvements in processing practices as well as packaging technology have also extended the shelf life of beef, which reduces the amount lost to spoilage. Canada continues to set goals on sustainable beef production throughout the entire supply chain, helping to become a leader in environmental sustainability.
On behalf of Canada's beef industry, I want to thank you for your participation in this virtual tour. We hope you were able to learn more about Canada's unique environment, technology, and management practices that make it possible to produce premium quality, grain-fed Canadian beef.